because it's different. Okay, does it know I'm me?
It has you as
Start video. I don't like where it's looking. We'll go more like this, more like that. Enter, Kelly Kelly. My microphone is on.
It's on for getting stuff together.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. We're the only ones here right now. I haven't admitted anyone else to the meeting. There's people waiting.
Already. I figured I would make sure to get in early because, yeah. I mean, I know I sent you a note earlier, but I didn't hear back. So I wanted to make sure that we're all good.
Oh, I just emailed you like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
All right, let me get the screen share happening.
And as we discussed, I'll monitor the chat in case there are questions.
Slideshow from the beginning. All right. Now, Jesus is going to help me get set up so that I can see people.
Oh, that's not what you want here. And then hide presenter view.
Okay, but this is still
Down here.
Where's my mouse? Away from the corner.
So if you just right click up on the top part. And then you want to exit full screen.
Exit full screen.
And then you can drag it wherever you want.
Okay, then I want this over here, and there is my, why is my screen sharing paused? Because I put that over top of my screen.
So you were sharing this side. So stop screen sharing, sorry. And when you move that over.
Move this over.
Yeah, so you want to exit out of full screen.
Exit full screen. Move this over. Okay.
Okay, and then when you go to share, it's going to be under more down here now.
Share.
And then you want to share the presentation.
Okay. But now when I want to share the other presentation, I want to share, and I want to share this presentation, yeah?
Well, but once you start it, right, you want to start the presentation, and it'll likely just go over here.
Okay.
Then you can share and then select it.
Okay, so I need to have this already started.
Well, I don't think you can have two of them running at the same time.
They're in separate windows. I don't see why not. I mean, they're both open.
Right, but to actually present.
No, I mean, I know, but I just want to go slideshow from beginning. And then I don't want to.
See how it reset it?
Well, because I have that one open right now. But I want to hide the presenter view.
Yeah.
And then I want to minimize this one. And then this one is also open. And so then I want to go back to my Zoom meeting, which is here. And I want to share screen.
Okay, so you
of this piece.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yay. I'm like, this is good. I was going to put them all into one really long PowerPoint, which is what I like to do. But Jill didn't send me her slides until like this morning. So
yeah, I know. She's so funny. I love Jill, but I reminded her on Thursday and she's like, yeah, okay. And then on Monday, she's like, sent me an email. I'm like, please communicate with Courtney about this because like we're not really worried about you being prepared, which is why it's like Friday that we made the deadline. So there's still 3 days in case you're late with them. But like
she sent them late yesterday afternoon, which was effectively this morning. Like by the time I actually could look at them. It was this morning.
Yeah, and she was like, I had a meeting with her yesterday and talked to her today and all that. And she's like, I need to pull my slides together. It's really just like I've done this presentation so many times. It's really just like, I'm not building slides. I'm just pulling slides. I'm like, okay, but get them to Courtney so she doesn't stress out. Just get them to her.
Well, she called me Tuesday. So yesterday afternoon, she called the office, which of course I wasn't there because I don't work at the main office.
Right.
And the office sent me an email that was like, you need to call her back. And I called her, and it was after I dropped my mom off at the airport. So it was like 1:00 yesterday. And she's like, what am I supposed to put in my slides? And I'm like, oh man.
You're like, whatever you want, just teach farm food safety. Like, yeah. Okay. Well, that's all right. I'm sure we'll be.
Right. Hello, Christine. All right. So there's like 57 people signed up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll wait a little while and get everybody on here.
I can keep an eye on and admit people as they come in to the waiting room.
Awesome. That's why I made you a co-host.
Yeah, I saw it pop up. I was like, oh, I'm a co-host now. That's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, you're actually a co-host in real life. I mean, you are technically. You guys can see the PowerPoint, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I am. It's the chicken fajita pizza with taco seasoning. If you guys want some, just gotta pull it out of the oven.
Ooh, look at these greenhouses.
Hey, Courtney, how are you?
Hi, Jenny. You must be at home because that's not your office.
I'm not in my office, no. Are you in your new office?
I am in my new office.
Oh, okay, cool.
What you see behind me is Tamara's desk.
Oh, okay, nice. Terry, can you hear me? Are you there? You are there. Maybe she's not there.
Are you talking to Karen?
No, I was talking to Terry Yater. I see her name, but she probably can't hear me.
No, I can hear you.
Oh.
I didn't even see, like, I don't know how to do these. That's why I'm always listening in with you guys, because I don't know what I'm doing.
That's okay. I just
didn't-
invited you to a chicken group, just so you know.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Hi, Brianna.
Hello.
How's everybody's day going?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good, good. I'm glad to see so many people getting signed on. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. I want to give people just a little bit of time to join. We're really excited. This is the first time that we have put this class on. So we're really looking forward to seeing how it goes tonight. And And hopefully we can give you guys some good information about the producer certificate process over the next couple of weeks.
I'm talking away here. Nobody's hearing me. I didn't realize I needed to register. So thanks for sending me that link, Courtney. It was easy to get in, and I'll register for the next two.
Okay.
I put it in my calendar and I figured it would just remind me and a Zoom link would magically appear and there I'd be.
No,
if you like any other course,
if you didn't sign up for the class, you didn't get the link. Which reminds me, did everybody else get my email yesterday with the reminder and the link in it? Yeah, cool.
Yes.
That went out. Yay, it's
I would
working.
have got it if I'd have registered. Okay, we're here. I'm excited.
All right, it is 4:32, so I am going to go ahead and get started. And then if more folks hop on this here in the next few minutes, that will be just fine. So welcome everybody. This is Homegrown Market Fresh. And this is our producer's certificate class. As I mentioned, this is the first time that we've done it. I'm Courtney Bloomer. I'm the food systems manager at Healthy Communities Coalition in Lyon County. And we are hosting this class in partnership with Fallon Food Hub. Kelly from Fallon Food Hub is here with us tonight as well. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Courtney. So yeah, I'm really excited about this presentation and excited to offer this to all of you amazing backyard gardeners and to help you step up your game and start growing produce that we can sell.
All right, so I wanted to take a few minutes here at the beginning of the presentation to talk a little bit about who we are. And I'll speak obviously on behalf of Healthy Communities Coalition, and then Kelly can fill you in a little bit about Fallon Food Hub and what their role is in our local food system. Healthy Communities Coalition is a nonprofit coalition. We're based in Dayton, Nevada. We are really interested in creating a more equitable and sustainable local food system. We have been working on food here in Lyon County since about 2009. When the recession hit in 2008, we did a community needs assessment and we saw that healthy food and access to food was really a need in our communities. And we started at that time working on ways that we could bring more healthy food into our communities here in Lyon County. That includes our 3 food pantries. We have one in Dayton, one in Silver Springs, and one in Yerington. We also have the Dayton Farmers Market, which is of particular interest to those of you here tonight on the class. Our Dayton Solidarity Garden is a community garden that we have in Dayton. It is co-located with our farmers market. We have a farm to school program in partnership with the Lyon County School District, and Tamara is our farm to school coordinator. She's here with us on the call tonight as well. And we have our newest asset, the Rural Health and Nutrition Initiative Production Facility, formerly Dayton Valley Aquaponics here in Dayton. And so we are working on getting that facility up and running to grow more local food. As I mentioned, we've been working on food here in our community since about 2009, and this is a real interest area for us. So we're excited to see so many other people who are also really interested in local food. All right, Kelly.
Thanks, Courtney. So again, my name is Kelly. I'm the director of the Fallon Food Hub here in Fallon in Churchill County. We're a much newer organization. We're also a nonprofit, but we launched in 2016 with the mission of increasing market opportunities for Northern Nevada agricultural producers, primarily through educating our community about the values of eating seasonally and locally. So our work is mainly focused on aggregating and distributing produce and increasing sales. So we manage a farm share program that's subscription based with delivery all through West Central Nevada. Additionally, we work in collaboration with a couple of other organizations to host farmers markets and on-farm events, do a series of educational experiences about local agriculture, and are moving towards having a permanent dedicated facility in downtown Fallon.
Thanks, Kelly. So a little bit about why we are offering this workshop. As you guys have probably already figured out, we're pretty invested in local food. It's something that we are really interested in, and we want to grow a robust local food system. This became even more pressing last year with the pandemic when we saw all of those empty grocery store shelves, and we wanted to think of ways that we could have more food here locally that didn't have to get shipped from somewhere else. Here in Nevada, we face kind of a unique situation because a lot of our food has to come over the mountains. So in the winter with a big storm, we also face some food shortages locally every year. So having a robust local food economy with people growing and doing value-added products and creating food here locally is something that we want to foster, and we want you guys to be part of that. People at our markets kept asking how they could participate. They were like, what could we do? How could we come and sell things at the market? This class is the answer to that question, really. And so it was something that we were seeing a lot from folks that were stopping by the markets. And we thought, you know, let's get these people who want to be interested in participating in the market. Let's help them make that happen. And so this class sort of grew out of that idea. More people feeding more people equals fewer hungry people, fewer people who can't access healthy foods. You know, we know that even right here in the service area that we're talking about, Churchill and Lyon counties and a little bit into Washoe and Story counties, there are food deserts right here where people would like to have access to fresh food and they don't. And farmers markets can fill part of that gap. Also, we want to make it easy for you, our local small farmers and market gardeners, to sell things at our markets. And we want to streamline that process a little bit. As you noticed when you registered, this is a 3-week class. It is going to be tonight, next Wednesday, and the following Wednesday. Part 1 today is going to focus on what is a producer certificate and why do you need one. And then the second half of the class tonight is going to be about food safety for the market gardener. That is going to be presented by the very knowledgeable Jill Moe from Desert Farming Initiatives. DFI handles a lot of the food safety stuff for NDA, and they know their stuff. So very excited to hear also what she has to say tonight. Next week, we're going to have planning your market garden and the actual step-by-step walkthrough of the process of applying for a producer certificate. So you don't want to miss that. Part 3 finally is going to wrap up with what to expect at the market and harvesting to sales, marketing your stuff at the farmers market. So that's what we've got coming up over the next few weeks, and we're excited to share all of that information with you. All right, at this time, I am going to turn it over to Justin. I'm going to introduce him here briefly. Justin McIntosh is a hobby farmer who focuses his growing efforts on growing a salsa garden. He's currently in his 2nd year as manager of the Dayton Farmers Market. He works for us here at Healthy Communities Coalition. He's been involved in the market and with many of its farmers for the past 5 years. Justin's interests involve bringing local food to residents and creating community partnerships.
Hello, I'm Justin McIntosh. How's everyone doing? So what this session is going to cover is what exactly a producer certificate is, which is basically something to be able to track where produce comes from, the basics of producing, which we're not going to give you a how-to on actually how to farm, but how to actually get to the market, and some food safety from Jill Moe again. Basically, all the producer certificate is about is tracking where the food comes from in case there's any problems like Listeria or E. coli and things like that. It allows the food to be traced and to hopefully fix it if there's any problems. Let's see. The base of producing.
Justin, are you getting the remote control button?
I am not.
There you go.
At all. There we go. Did I just go to? All right. So I figured we'd take a moment to ask people what their favorite produce is to buy at the farmer's market. Personally, I love the purple Peruvian potatoes that I can't get anywhere else. Oh, I did not do that. My apologies, guys. There we go. All right. So anyone interested in sharing what they like to buy at the market?
Tomatoes. Tomatoes for me. I love them.
kind?
I don't remember the name, but they're those purple black tomatoes. Whatever those are.
The purple Cherokees?
There you go. I just saw some planted at the hub at the other facility today, and I was like, oh, those are my favorite. Totally spaced the name. Yes, those.
Anyone else?
You know, I love it when we can get the really great melons. And Kelly is, you know, kind of familiar with those because a lot of times those come from some of our great growers out in Fallon.
Yeah, I'm going to second the melons. Last year I sold, I think, 14 different varieties of just cantaloupe. So, and they're all a little bit different.
My favorite's the Charente.
I'm a Crenshaw fan, which isn't technically a cantaloupe, but it's
No,
delicious.
this is my
Me too, Donna. Donna says that anything that isn't available in the grocery store. That's my favorite too, but yeah. All right. Anyone else?
Any kohlrabi
different
lovers out
herbs.
there?
Oh, whoops. Go ahead. I'll wait. Go ahead. Okay, so I'll go ahead then. I like different herbs that maybe we can't get in the local market. And I really like it if the plant starts are available at a farmer's market, because then I have those and can just grab it when I need it, rather than trying to scurry to find something that might not be there.
Fresh squash from Lisa.
I like getting microgreens because I just can't do that to my own plants.
Yeah, I haven't been able to have any luck with those either. Personally, I'm doing everything hydroponic indoors right now. And I've got cherry tomatoes going right at this moment that should be ripe next week.
All right. Anybody in the chat listing? I don't even have the
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. Most of
chat
them.
open on mine, you guys.
Yeah.
All right.
From the chat, we got fresh squash, greens, microgreens and herbs, melons, and anything that's not available in a grocery store.
So what we can kind of see is that people like all different kinds of things at the market. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to choose what to grow, but sort of what we're pointing at here is that like all different kinds of things can find a market at your local farmer's market. So as you're planning what to grow, kind of keep this in mind. All right, Justin.
All right. So what is a producer certificate? The certificates are issued by the Nevada Department of Agriculture, and they let gardeners and farmers sell their produce directly to the public. Again, it's all about the tracking, making sure that the produce is coming from a safe place where, you know, we don't have random cats and birds and hopefully not too many critters wandering the garden, and that they're not being hit with any major poisons or anything like that. No, Jenny, this one does not cover cottage items. Actually, that's the next slide. But this is purely for taking produce from wherever you're growing it and selling it directly to the public, be it a restaurant, farmer's market, or wherever else you sell. It allows you to sell and be tracked on that. Thank you, Kelly. And there's another certificate that you'll see when you do sign up for a producer certificate that's for his produce vendor certificate. And that is a totally different thing. That's basically only for farmers market and stores to be able to sell produce from an actual farm. we won't be covering that today either, but it shouldn't be necessary for anyone here. I think most of us already have our own markets now. Let's see. Yeah, we'll do the next one. If it cooperates. There we go. All right, so producer certificates are not cottage food permits, unfortunately. That's one of my favorite permits as well. They're not organic certification, a business license. It doesn't cover an actual health inspection if you're planning on serving things like cottage foods. And it is definitely not a catering or restaurant license, which requires an actual restaurant. It is only for produce from wherever you're growing it to be sold directly to the public. All these things, cottage food permits are very simple to acquire. They are for jams and canned goods and various oils and certain salsas. Unfortunately, not my salsa. I don't like canning it. And all sorts of fun little things like popcorn and various snacks. All of your baked goods fall under the cottage food permit. And as far as a business license, every county has different requirements in Nevada for what you need a business license for. That would allow you, most of our smaller farmers probably won't actually need one, but if you want to actually make some money off of this, a business license is a good idea. The health inspection thing, as far as the producer certificate goes, the Nevada Department of Agriculture will show up to look at your garden or wherever you're growing and just verify that it's a safe location. Again, purely to avoid things that might poison the food or cause various illnesses that we're aware of, bacterial infections and small details like that. You know, we don't want a kitty litter box being a place that people grow food. So do your best to take steps to make sure that that's not happening. And why should you get a producer certificate? You don't need a certificate to have a farm or garden or share your food or anything like that, but in order to sell it, it's required. In order to be at a market, you have to have a producer certificate in Nevada. Again, they improve the traceability of the food if there's an E. coli or listeria or any common food poison outbreak, which is about 40% of our major diseases. All food poisoning in the U.S. was, yes, that too, 60% of our, no, pardon me, I stumbled on that one. 60% of our foodborne illnesses are from poisonous food that has come from a farm. And in order to track that, we keep an eye on it here. One of the big things is that the smaller the garden is, the less likely it is to have most of these issues. So we really encourage people to grow in their own backyard on a smaller property. You know, the smaller the farm, the safer it is in general. So it's an easy thing to go for instead of trying to be a mega corporate farm. It also makes sure that everything's in compliance with the Food Safety Modernization Act, which is the thing that basically controls the laws that are behind all the farms in our country that ensure that all the food is as safe as it can be. So does anyone else know what FSMA stands for? FSMA? Now that I cheated and told you. All right. Go for it, Jill.
I'll let you take this one. I'll come in later.
Oh yeah, no worries. No, I some days I remember what it means and some days I don't. It's horrible. The benefits of having a producer certificate are that you can take part in your community by selling your produce at local markets or restaurants. It takes the food trading. Good, Jerry, thank you. All of us have probably experienced sharing our produce, you know, sharing our eggs or our tomatoes or carrots or whatever we're growing. Everybody shares their squash every year, I know. We always end up growing way more than we need of that. This is just the next step, being able to take it to the farmer's market. You know, I've always got at my market people coming and wanting to give and bring food, and they love to be able to sell it, and I can't do anything with it without them having a producer certificate, because they're not listed with the Department of Agriculture. So this is the next step, being able to bring all that excess and sell it to someone else. You can sell it cheap, you can sell it at market prices, but it allows you to bring it to the market and come join us and hang out a little bit. It's a great little family of people that we have that are at our markets, and it's a fun culture to be a part of. You also get to take pride in selling something that you've grown from start to production. You know, I love growing all my salsa things. I do like 8 different kinds of tomatoes and 15 types of peppers every year, and 5 different types of onion and 3 different types of garlic. And everything that I grow is something that I love to share. I love making my salsa and sharing it with people. And I love taking my extra produce and giving it away too. And with the peppers especially, most of them are so weird and rare that many people don't have them. You can't buy them anywhere. You can't even access seeds half the time. So having a producer is a good way to get into this culture of having a good seed swapping community where everybody can have all these rare seeds and be able to grow them at home and sell and trade them at markets. Then you also get to contribute to a healthy and happy community food system. As Courtney mentioned, we are in a food desert. In Lyon County especially, we have several places that are official food deserts where there aren't any stores for within 10 miles. And being able to go sell to your neighbors if they need food is a very nice thing. Or, you know, we can always give it to them too. But the selling factor just, again, is about the ability to trace the food, where it comes from, and make sure that no one's getting sick from it. According to the USDA, the food desert is any area that is rural and is 10 miles plus from a store, for the rural areas anyway. This here is a picture of the community farm out at, what is it? The Fort Churchill State Park. And they run this for a bunch of kids every summer. And last year you could see all the smoke in the background. But this was still a very productive garden. It fed about 30 people for half the summer. It was a very nice little garden. And it was just put on by one ranger and whoever came and volunteered and helped her out. You know, you don't need to have 20 acres. You can have 1 acre as one of our biggest farms here in Dayton. We had a Little Busy Bee farm here who grew everything from scratch, and they managed to sell to like 15 different stores and 5 different restaurants, and they were very busy as their name entitled. You don't need a lot of space. Just figuring out how to plan your garden and what to grow and what's going to sell is all you need. We really want to be able to provide more access to food. We'd love to have fresh produce in local stores, at farmers markets. We'd love to be able to just provide more access. We want to have a bounty of food here instead of people reaching for it. It would be a great thing to not have to go to Smith's and pick up, you know, all your produce all the time. It would be nice if our smaller stores didn't have to go to the supermarkets to pick up their produce. It's just nice to be able to pick up something, take a bite, and know exactly where it came from. Oops. Sorry, that was an accident. Again, small farms help reduce food deserts. They drop the size, they make food available down the street. You know, you can set up your, if you have a producer certificate, you can set up a stand on your street and sell food directly to people there. The more gardeners and more farmers we have, the more food our area has, and hopefully the healthier our community will be. So the producer's certificate can cover anything from fruits, vegetables, herbs, microgreens, everything we discussed that is grown in the ground, greenhouse, or in raised beds. It also covers certain hydroponic foods. There are various rules to all these things, which are worth looking up. But again, this is not the actual how-to on how to grow. Hopefully everyone here is already growing something or has some sort of produce going, especially if they want to sell this year. There are all sorts of things that you can sell. And, this is one sample that was from Dayton Valley Aquaponics last year. They had cucumbers, ginger, and tomatoes all growing side by side in one greenhouse. And they were really doing quite well. Eggs and honey are both also included. Anything that you don't actually prepare is included in this that you grow or produce. The bees and chickens have their own special rules as well. But basically, the most important thing that producer certificate tracks is whether or not they're being raised safely and whether or not their produce is in a safe environment. And again, this won't cover any jams or anything you make with the honey or the eggs, none of your baked goods. This is not a cottage food thing, but just the producer certificate. Hopefully we'll get to the cottage food license here in a couple of months. And how to get started. You need to plan where you're going to plant your seeds, which we will cover in one of our sessions here in a couple of weeks. Basically, just try to keep it safe. Make sure that it's a place that cats aren't going to have ready access to. Try to keep all the critters out. Just put a little bit of effort into making sure that the garden is safe. You can have an in-ground garden that's just tilled soil in your yard, preferably fenced in, raised beds, container gardens. We have a guy here in Dayton that grows out of hay bales, which is really cool. Greenhouse or a hoop house. Bees need to have a hive in a safe place, usually a little fenced in area, and chickens are pretty much the same thing. And half the stuff is made safe just by protecting it from predators. The chickens, once they have a place to graze and sleep, odds are you're keeping them safe from the coyotes and birds as well. And that covers most of the things you need to be safe. Yeah, dehydrated produce and freeze-dried do count as produce, and you can sell those. A lot of people you can sell basically like simple teas that are dried leaves. Things like that are covered. Yeah, and the herbs as well. Anything you dry or freeze-dry is also covered as long as you grew it. And it's listed on once you do the certification process, every little thing that you grow has to be documented, and they want to know how large of a plot you're doing it on and what you're growing it in, whether or not you're using animal manure and things like that. But yeah, it covers all this stuff. All of your herbs are covered, and again, teas. And anything that you add to food, as long as you didn't actually have to prepare it in any way, as long as you didn't add anything to it or cook or stew it. Again, this isn't our official how-to. Please look into any of your rules and regulations on chickens or bees, or if you're doing hydroponic. We know a lot of this stuff, but some of it is new to us as well, and it all has its own special rules and regulations to go by. Like you can look on Grow Your Own Nevada. We have a few sites. The Desert Food Farming Initiative site and University of Nevada Cooperative Extension all have all sorts of details on this stuff. There's also a lot of YouTube videos on it as well from these same people. There we go. Stop that. Thank you, Kelly. The important thing is to grow what you want. Grow things that are fun. I grow all sorts of peppers. I love scary hot ones and random peppers from faraway places that no one else has. You can't get them in stores. I do dragon cayenne and ghost peppers, reapers, all those horrible things that you hear stories of and see people doing fail videos on YouTube. That's my specialty. I love peppers. and I put them in everything. Jill Mo will cover that in a couple minutes here, Shannon, but we'll let her cover that. Let's see. What else is going on? I just lost my PowerPoint there, Courtney. Again, grow what is fun, grow what you enjoy. And if you want to actually make some money, grow things that you know people want. You know, everybody here responded, they want to be able to grow things or sell things that are, and buy things that are not available in stores. You know, most people don't sell, none of our stores sell anything that's hotter than a jalapeno for the most part, or habanero. There are 1,000 different types of tomatoes and potatoes that just don't show up in stores. Onions as well, all sorts of greens. And the herbs, you know, you can spend $20 for an ounce of basil, or you can grow it your own for $5. It's a whole lot of fun to be able to do that. I did a huge batch of basil myself last year, and all my own cilantro for my salsas. And I'm dying to get into some other stuff now, like mushrooms and more oddities. Again, I love the purple potatoes. I grew a few of those last year. I had to get that imported. It was a pain to find. And let's see. Don't stress about what you're growing or selling. Don't stress over a certificate. It's not as complex as you might make it out to be. It's a very simple process to go through. There are a few details that you have to worry about, but once you get through those, it's all downhill. Please do your research on what you're growing or producing or want to sell. Again, you know, there's special processes for storing and cleaning your eggs and your honey. And we love our bees and chickens. They're awesome. And don't stress over it. Just enjoy it. Have fun. All right, here's a couple of extra resources from UNR primarily. This food safety series is amazing if you have a chance to watch it. It was animated and fun to watch and had all sorts of random information about food safety. And and then we have the Desert Farming Institute's documentary, which has a lot of good information as well. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Let me check the chat real quick, just in case.
Justin, all the questions in the chat have been answered with the exception of Shannon's question, which will be covered under the food safety segment.
All right, thank you much. All right, back over to Courtney then.
All right, thank you, Justin. All right, next up, we are gonna have a food safety presentation by Jill Mo. Jill joined Desert Farming Initiative 3 years ago and recently took on the duties of interim director. She has a master's degree in environmental policy from the University of Washington, a master's certificate in sustainable agriculture from Washington State University's Global Campus, and advanced training in on-farm produce safety. Jill comes from a family with agricultural roots in the Midwest and was introduced to desert farming as a Peace Corps agroforestry volunteer in West Africa. She has managed watershed planning and regional natural resource management projects, has hands-on experience in market farming in the US and Europe, and enjoys working directly with landowners and growers. Her key interest is in building healthy, sustainable food systems. Welcome, Jill.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I loved your presentation, Justin, all the pretty pictures of fruit and vegetables. Makes me feel like I'm not working. So glad to be here. Courtney, I didn't think you were going to read that whole thing, but thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so I think, do I have control now, Courtney?
You should have to accept it. I gave you control, but something should have popped up.
Oh, okay, view options.
Okay, let me just give it to you again. Okay.
It says I can control your screen, but I don't see anything to click on.
And then click on, it should just be on the top middle. You're good to go.
Options. All right.
So if you're not seeing the button, I can just click through for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
If you would,
Oh wait, I think you're doing it because it's. Yep.
is that me?
Oh wait, let me. 1 second. Sorry, everyone. I have to stop sharing the screen and share Jill's presentation. That is what's going on. Sorry, Jill. I'm not sharing I'm not sharing your screen.
I could pull up the slides myself.
There, how does that look?
Yeah, that looks like it. But I think, okay. So I'll just give you a.
Okay, here you go.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to give a quick introduction of the Desert Farming Initiative in case any of you are not familiar with it. It is a demonstration farm located on the edge of the campus at UNR. It's a part of the Ag Experiment Station. So what you're looking at here is kind of a view out over the whole site. Desert Farming Initiative is just part of the fields you see there in the foreground, but isn't it gorgeous? It's a great place to work because you have this view of the mountains, and anyway, nice to be in the campus environment. So the Desert Farming Initiative is an organic certified demonstration farm. We're currently farming 4 acres. That changes a bit each year, just depending on the land we have access to and what we can manage, basically. We grow fruit and vegetables. We also sell vegetable starts to other farmers in the region. And because we're a commercial operation, we do sell to wholesale markets like the awesome Fallon Food Hub, also the Tahoe Food Hub, the co-op in town. We do a farmer's market, a farm share on campus, and we also prioritize getting fresh fruit and vegetables to pantries in town. Just wanted to share this with you if you can see my video. This is our producer certificate. You can see it just gives info about the farm and lists what we're growing, basically how much and when. So that's basically what you're going for. In addition to the commercial operation, we do anecdotal and formal research. So examples of that are, right now we're just finishing up a anecdotal winter cover cropping trial, which we'll share via social media. And then this coming season, we'll do a formal melon variety trial with funding from the Department of Agriculture. That research will be shared in a published paper. So it kind of just shows the range of what we have going. We employ students. We have student interns who are working on their degrees at UNR. We have AmeriCorps volunteers on board and community work trade volunteers. So it's a real diverse kind of eclectic group of people here who are interested in food. In addition to the production side, we do a farm to food pantry program and work with Kelly and other leaders in the region on addressing food security, Courtney as well. And then we also run this food safety program, which is both demonstration here at the farm, but also doing workshops like this. So next slide.
Okay, is it going?
No.
Let me, well. Okay. I'm gonna reshare it because it froze. The whole program froze.
Oh, I could share my screen with it. Would that be helpful?
Sure, that might Do you have it up?
I'm just opening it right now. I think you have to let me share my screen though.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry, everyone. See,
Bear with us.
we're new.
Every Zoom meeting's a new adventure.
Okay. I'm sharing
Okay.
screen. Going to presentation mode. Does that look right to everybody?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so just the last bit about DFI's background. It started in 2013 as a collaboration between different entities here at the university and the Department of Agriculture. And our overall mission is to strengthen sustainable agriculture and food systems in Nevada while researching and demonstrating best practices that can be replicated in other high desert climates. In the pictures here, you see some students working on an internship project, and you see a farm apprenticeship and one of our AmeriCorps volunteers down there in the left. So I'm going to cover just a kind of an overview of on-farm produce safety, a little bit more detail than what Justin just started with, talk about how to assess risk on your own property, and then coming up with key practices that address those risks. Of course, I'm including a lot of pictures of pretty produce. Why not? Okay, so an overview of farm and garden produce safety. So really growers of any scale can implement produce safety practices to prevent foodborne illnesses. And that ranges from, you know, your backyard garden to the largest farms we have here in Nevada, like Perry and Sons. They're farming 10,000 acres, I believe, right now. Maybe Kelly can correct me on that. So there are certain pathogens, of course, that are usually the culprits for foodborne illness, and those are the ones we focus on with these practices. E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria. There's never been a documented foodborne illness originating on a farm here in Nevada. But of course, people do get foodborne illnesses here from produce in other states. So produce safety practices cover a range of issues from health and hygiene. The way people mostly get sick from food is from other people with dirty hands touching their food. So that's really the key and the simplest way to address foodborne illness. And then there are also practices with handling animals and proper harvest and storage of fruit and vegetables. In these practices, we're focusing on those types of produce that people eat raw. If produce is cooked, usually the pathogens are killed off. So just something to keep in mind as we go through this. Touching back on the Food Safety Modernization Act, that really kicks in when you get into producing and selling over $25,000 of produce per year on average. There are a few other criteria we don't need to get into now, but it's a good rule of thumb to keep in mind. Then some of the requirement or practices that I'm going to talk about today actually become requirements and subject to inspection. In any case, all of these practices can efficiently be put in place on a farm or a garden. One of the things that I really feel grateful for is being able to test out all these practices here at DFI and then share what we've learned from our own experience with these practices. So the first place to start is just taking a step back from your site and looking at it and considering what could be sources of risks at that particular site. Questions to think about are listed here. What previous activities occurred where you're growing produce? So if you're on a new site, you want to think about what was there before? Can you find out more about the history of the property if you're not sure? An example I've provided here is kind of an overview of the Desert Farming Initiative production areas and those fields in the top right corner there, those 4 acres. I'll talk about those kind of as we go through these questions. Those were in use as pastures for the past probably 2 decades before we started farming them for vegetables. Land use is upwind from the site. So on our site here, the wind is almost always prevailing from the west southwest. And so actually we do have a risk upwind from us. On the top left corner there is the livestock center. And when the wind really gets going, we can potentially get manure blowing over or windborne pathogens from that area, from the animals. One thing we did there, which I'll get into some of this more later, is along that western fence line. So the left fence line of those 4 acres, we've put in a hedgerow to try and catch some of those windborne pathogens. And actually it just helps with soil erosion and other issues on the farm as well. Is there the chance of water runoff from an adjacent site with incompatible land uses? So our site is fairly flat, but if you're on a hillside or a sloping site, you want to think about what might be running down from land uses uphill from you, if there are any. Think about the history of flooding if you're in a floodplain. And then I guess I touched on this, is there animal production nearby? What are those animals? How are they being managed? Do they have access to the field? What kind of wildlife do you have going on in your area or using the area? So at our site here, we've got a whole slew of rodents. Are any of you dealing with rodents on your sites? Mice, rabbits, ground squirrels, pack rats, marmots. All of those can pose risks in a food production area. They carry pathogens that can make people sick. So you want to think about controlling rodents. We also have coyotes. On the other hand, there are species of wildlife that help control those rodents, and you may want to think about how to attract some beneficial wildlife like hawks. In general, it helps to just draw up a farm map or really think about this from the overhead view like I have here. Does anybody have any questions on this? Okay, so now I'll get into just talking about some specific produce safety practices that start to deal with some of those risks I just introduced. A lot of times people think of kind of the end of the line here on the far right when they think of food safety. They think of the store where they buy their food, or how they're going to wash their food at home, or how they're going to prepare it. But there are ways on our farms or gardens where we can start preventing foodborne illness from the very beginning. From the far left on this slide, where you can see our farm manager last year is spreading compost and thinking about the origin of the compost, what's in the compost, how is it being spread, where was it stored, all the way through to the end when you're bringing your food to market. Okay, so I touched on this earlier. Health and hygiene is one of the key things at any stage of food production where you can prevent foodborne illness. Number one, making sure all the people that are handling the food are well. And these days it's, a high priority topic. With COVID, you see one of our student workers here wearing a mask at work. What we do is a temperature check. We have a self-symptom check every day when people arrive at the work site. And then we have policies for if people start feeling ill or become injured while they're at work, just to make sure that we're preventing any sort of transfer of pathogens from that person, our workers, our hands to the produce. Hand washing is number one, 20 seconds with soap and clean water. I think everybody's gotten a refresher on that in the past year. Proper glove use. At our farm, we don't require gloves for any activity, But if people want to use gloves, we want to make sure that they're putting clean gloves on clean hands if they're handling produce. So we don't use work gloves where we were turning compost to then go harvest, say, zucchini that's a little bit spiky. We never use work gloves that can't be cleaned and sanitized. So what that means is we usually use disposable gloves for handling produce during harvest, as an example. Clean clothing. Clothing can be a source of pathogens. Say you were turning compost, or you were handling fertilizers. And then after that task, you wanted to move on to harvest. You want to make sure that you're conscious about the fact that clothes can carry pathogens. And then clean and accessible restrooms. That's really applying to bigger farms, where you are way out in a field and need to use restroom, and then you could have a crew that doesn't want to waste time getting back over to the restroom, and they decide to do their business in a place where you don't want them doing business, if you know what I mean. So maybe that part doesn't apply to these smaller operations we're talking about today, but being conscious of keeping your facilities clean on a regular schedule is a way that you can also prevent illness. And then training all the people that are working on your site is important, not only when they start working there, but throughout their time with you. Our workers are trained and retrained throughout the season. We'll do spot trainings, we'll do focus on a certain topic that's come up. And I've found since implementing our food safety program, we are continuously refining it, either to make our practices more efficient and easier for us, or to make them more effective. We're learning new ways to implement these practices, or we're finding new equipment that makes them more effective. Okay, moving on to soil and soil amendments. So pathogens that are a human health hazard can be present in potting mixes, soils, soil amendments, and compost. Being aware of that is number one, and then being able to handle those risks. Compost is tricky because it can include all sorts of source materials, particularly if you're buying them from a supplier and you weren't involved in making that compost. You just want to be aware of that. Compost can include animal byproducts, vegetative or food waste that may contain these hazards, depending on the source. Things you can do, use an effective composting method. There's a lot of guidance about that from the Produce Safety Alliance. I'm glad to share all that with you. Actually, we have a workshop coming up on Monday, open to the public, free, and it's focusing on composting, soil health, and produce safety. So it takes a deep dive into that topic if you're interested. My email is at the end of this presentation, and please feel free to reach out and join us for that. Storing soil amendments safely. So you want to keep those protected from the elements where they might be subject to wind or surface water runoff. You want them away from seeds, tools, and equipment that could be contaminated. And then ensuring that any commercial animal-based soil amendments have been tested and treated. So examples of that are feather meal, bone meal, blood meal. Those are typical amendments that are used on small farms. And then also compost. And you want to make sure that you ask whoever your supplier was for records of the treatment and testing, and or a certification letter that they're telling you that their amendments are safe. And did I include an example of that here? Oops, no. I can share that with you after the fact too. An example of that on our end is we use full circle compost often here at DFI, and Cody Witt, who's one of the co-owners there, will give us a letter every year certifying that their compost is pathogen free and describing the testing and treatment methods that were used to prove that. And then we have our picture here on the right of 3 of our AmeriCorps members this year and one of our students actively making compost out there. We're trying out different methods, and sometimes with this success, sometimes not. Getting a pile up to the right temperature for the right amount of time is definitely an art and a science. Okay, risks associated with water and issues to be aware of. So generally, you want to be aware of the quality of your water source. Under the produce safety rule, which is the regulations associated with the Food Safety Modernization Act, you want to be aware that testing may be required of your water. And then in general, surface water from a ditch or pond or otherwise is a lot riskier than groundwater or municipal water. Animal access to a water source, definitely something you want to be aware of if there's animal feces going into your water that you're using on your vegetable beds. Surface water runoff into fields I've already covered. Making sure that you deal with water system leaks. The water, we all usually think of the water leaking out of the system, but there is a way for pathogens to make their way back into your water system and contaminate your source. So being aware of that is key. Think about the quality of the water you're using to mix fertilizers and pesticides, the quality of water that's being used for hand washing, and also the water that you're using to wash produce if you are washing produce. And then keep in mind, submerging vegetables is riskier than spray washing with a hose and nozzle or under a sink faucet. And the reason for that is the water itself in a filled up sink or basin can become a vector for spreading pathogens. So if one of your heads of lettuce is contaminated and you're washing it first, and then say 25 other heads of lettuce after it in that same basin, you could be spreading those pathogens to all of those heads of lettuce. So a lot of this is about, of course, minimizing the risks, but also the magnitude of a potential impact, okay? Okay, and then managing risks right before harvest. You can efficiently put some practices and procedures in place. I think the hard part is figuring out what your practices are and when you're going to do them. Once you figure that out, it's just a matter of doing it every time. And the Desert Farming Initiative and Department of Agriculture are more than happy to help you figure out those practices and help you put together a food safety plan for your operation. We do that for free. It's part of our work with NDA, and I'm glad to come out and meet with farms and gardens of any size and do that. Or in person or over the phone these days. Okay, so risks that can be efficiently managed right before harvest. Checking for contamination from wildlife. Here you can see a picture of beautiful charred leaf that we had to discard because it had bird feces on it. Cross-contamination from tools and harvest containers, physical hazards, and then again, health and hygiene. Just one more plug for health and hygiene. So at DFI on a harvest day, we check every area of the farm that's going to be harvested and keep a record of what we found. First step is looking for evidence of contamination. There on the left is Claire. She's got our handy clipboard. She's writing down which bed she's checked, what she found, and what she did about it. And so you can see she's placing a flag there where she found some animal waste, and doing that all before harvest begins in any one of those areas on the farm. Second is discarding any contaminated produce, plant matter, and soil. You don't want to attempt to clean anything that's visibly contaminated, like washing this tomato here that has feces on it. It's unlikely that you can get all of the pathogens off if there are pathogens on it. You just don't want to take that risk. Also removing physical hazards. That could be broken tools or pieces of tools or glass that broke. We don't allow any glass on the Desert Farming Initiative or in the Desert Farming Initiative production areas. It's an example of a policy you could have on your garden as well. One of the reasons why you want to remove everything that's been contaminated, not just the produce, is you want to be able to go back on your next harvest day and maybe harvest those green tomatoes that are behind that red one. Maybe the green ones did not get contaminated and there's something that you could still harvest, right? And then you want to identify the contaminated area plus a buffer zone, because you're not sure. I mean, you can't always see everywhere the animal went or everything that was dropped from the animal. So we allow a 5-foot buffer zone. That's not a rule or a requirement. It's just the level of risk we're comfortable accepting at this farm. So that's something you decide for yourself. And we always mark the area with flags. At one point they were using stakes and string and it just got really complicated. So that's when, this is an example of how we made that whole process a little bit more efficient by just going with the flag. And then we reassess that area on the next harvest to make sure the animals haven't been back for a visit. Any questions about this? Okay. Preventing crop loss. So, I mean, as you're sizing up an operation, I guess I'm not positive any of you all attending are interested in scaling up at this point, but down the road, finding contamination in your farm can really add up. And an example of that at DFI is, was it last spring? No, about a year and a half ago, we came back from a weekend ready for a big carrot harvest. We were going to harvest 5 big rows out in the field of carrots. And all of those 5 rows have been completely taken out by geese in one weekend. Not only the greens, but below ground. And, you know, so then we have an issue with, say, for example, the Fallon Food Hub that was planning to have those delivered the next day. And so this slide is about thinking about that potential in advance and preventing it. One thing to keep in mind again is that produce that's rarely consumed raw, it is cooked. So an example of that would be potato, pie pumpkin. You can safely harvest those because they're always cooked. Nobody eats potatoes raw. Nobody eats pie pumpkin raw. So you can go ahead with your harvest if that's the area that was affected. Thinking in advance about alternative markets for produce that has been, you know, affected by some animal intrusion event, and having a plan in place to be able to do that, to pursue an alternative market, is something that's great to have in advance. And you want to be able to have a kill step involved in that, so heat processing, for example. And of course, you want to keep in mind, you know, what the crop is, what the type of damage is, how severe it was. And then, yeah, so the records that you saw in the previous slide, so having a record of where there's animal pressure, where you're getting wildlife intrusion, or where you have some flooding on your property. For example, you may want to decide to better secure that area, maybe only plant crops in those areas that are always cooked, and just really minimize the potential for this risk. Oh, so in these photos here, if you're wondering, we weren't having a party and put up flags here. Those low flags help keep the geese out of our fields. And we often attach, you can't see it in this photo, but reflective tape. You can see we use these white row covers here to keep geese from getting into the crop. That helps sometimes, although they will get under it sometimes as well. Any sort of deterrent helps. We have in the bottom photo in the way back, you can see a coyote decoy. And then in the foreground, that's a motion activated sprinkler. So these are all kind of examples of ways you can deter wildlife from getting into your fields and causing damage. Okay, then cleaning and sanitizing food contact surfaces. This is getting back to that idea of preventing cross-contamination. So if you have one thing that's contaminated, you don't want that contamination to spread to other produce. So it's an ongoing cycle. You're harvesting, you're putting clean tools and dirty tools and equipment in different areas. You're cleaning and sanitizing all of the surfaces that touch the produce, and then you're harvesting, and you go back through this cycle every time you have a harvest. Food contact surfaces include harvest containers, tools, sinks, tables, reusable gloves, packing materials, and then people themselves. The proper process for cleaning and sanitizing. You know, we all have different ways we clean our houses and so forth. For food contact surfaces, you want to make sure that your process includes removing debris, scrubbing with soap and water, and make sure it's a soap that's appropriate for food contact surfaces. Every label, soap label will include information about that. Rinse, sanitize again with a sanitizer that's appropriate for food contact, and then air dry. This is an area again where it's good to just have your process written down, or make sure everybody knows what it is, and you do it the same way every time. And then this is where a clean break kind of comes into play. And what I mean by clean break is between each harvest or between each type of produce that you're harvesting, if you have that clean break, you kind of limit the amount of produce that could be contaminated. So as you get into a bigger operation structure, and say you've got 10 cases of lettuce and 20 cases of tomatoes, and a whole lot of volume going moving through your farm to market, and then someone comes to you and says, hey, I got sick from your lettuce. And then you think back and you think, okay, well, I didn't clean all those surfaces between my lettuce, tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. Then you have to think, okay, well, I should really notify anybody that got any of that produce that, I want to recall it. And if you had cleaned between your lettuce harvest, say, and your tomato harvest, then you wouldn't have to do that. You would only have to contact the people who ate the lettuce, right? Or the people who bought the lettuce. Does that make sense? Okay. And then keeping a record as your operation grows. Records are important. I don't know about you, but as I get older, writing everything down becomes more and more important. Record keeping, particularly over the course of a full season with a lot of different crops, helps you keep track of your practices if anything comes up down the road. One more thing on cross-contamination. You can see one of our AmeriCorps volunteers here cleaning the harvest crates we use. Again, they're cleaned every time between uses. We try and keep those harvest containers off the ground as much as possible, and we don't stack them if they've been on the ground. So we have lids or some way to separate them if we are stacking, or we move those crates along the ground on a harvest cart, keeping them off the soil. Any place you're walking or not checking, during your pre-harvest risk assessment, for example, could be moving pathogens through your farm. And then you can see in the bottom right corner picture there, an example of some labeling we have here. Any of the tools that we use on food contact surfaces, like these brushes, they're not used on any other kind of surface. So we wouldn't use those brushes to clean, say, a spade we used on compost. Okay, and then thinking about storing equipment and packaging. You want to keep it off the floor and away from walls. They recommend 18 inches away from the walls. That has to do with rodents. If you're reusing boxes, so this is kind of a key issue that not a lot of growers think about. You want to be aware that waxed boxes can't be cleaned and sanitized. There's no way to clean and sanitize that surface. So you want to assume it's dirty and line it. Of course, the same thing with cardboard that isn't waxed. You can't clean and sanitize that. So you want to think about a box liner or bagging produce that goes into those containers. Of course, you can reuse them safely if that produce is pumpkins or potatoes, something that's always going to be cooked without a liner. And you could consider designating equipment for particular uses, like I said, with those brushes in the last slide, making sure that you're protecting those ones that come into contact with food directly. And then having a plan for cleaning and sanitizing work areas, your wash station, and coolers on a regular schedule is important. If you have it on your calendar, say every other week, I'm going to clean and sanitize the cooler, it's on your calendar and you do it. I wanted to point out on this slide and forgot, you can see this green grating on our wash table outside. We do a lot of our produce washing on that table as well. You want to think about the types of materials you're using on your surfaces. So if you're scaling up and you need a new wash table, think about not using wood. Wood can't be cleaned and sanitized to be free of pathogens. So on this table, you can see we have this coated shelf grating, which works great, can easily scrub and clean it and sanitize it. And then you don't have to worry about it being a potential risk as well. If you're going to use a sanitizer, make sure you choose it carefully. Read the EPA label, make sure you use the proper concentration and understand how stable it is. Sometimes pH and water temperature can really change the effectiveness of a sanitizer. And you want to be aware of all those things before you start using it. There's this great resource on the Produce Safety Alliance website that has really all of the common sanitizers that are used with their EPA labels readily available. So that's a great resource. We use Sanidate 5.0 at DFI as a sanitizer. It's hydrogen peroxide and peracetic acid product. It's OMRI approved, so allowed on organic operations. And I'm not like marketing it, but I'm just telling you there are options for organic operations as well. You can use chlorine, which is a whole lot cheaper, but it's also less stable, and there are issues with making sure there are no residues if you're concerned about organic certification. And then if you're treating water with a sanitizer, I would really recommend you do a training before you use treated water for submersion washing, because there are some key issues there to be aware of. Okay, I'm getting to the end. I hope I'm not going on too long. Keeping a record, touched on this a few times. It can be a reminder for yourself or your staff to implement these safety measures. A log or a checklist shows what's been done and what's left to be done. It's a good way to communicate, particularly on a farm like DFI where there's a lot of different people coming and going. It's a good communication tool. It is also a record. So say you did get into a situation where there's a foodborne illness associated with your farm or garden, you can look back at your records, see what was happening that day, show what measures were taken. It helps with liability issues for sure. And that information helps you recognize patterns on your farm. So like with this pre-harvest inspection log here on the slide, I can look back every month and just look at, okay, where did we have the most wildlife pressure? Where did we have to do the most cleanup? How did we do that? Was that an effective thing that we were doing, or was it happening over and over again? So it's a great way to kind of help you progress on your operation. And if you are subject to the produce safety rule down the line, records like this are required. I have these free posters that include real simple checklists and reminders, and also in these blue boxes, sort of an explanation of why produce safety measures are important. I'm glad to provide those to you. You just reach out to me and I can put one in the mail. This is another resource I can send you, or you can find on our website. It's basically a questionnaire that walks you through the requirements in the produce safety rule, and it when it is filled out, can act as a food safety plan for your farm. So it describes the measures you're taking, describes your water quality, that sort of thing. It's a 10-page resource with a lot of links in it to further information and guidance. And that's it. Glad to answer any questions or stay on and discuss.
All right, Jill, thank you so much. That was a lot of awesome information. And hopefully everybody has a little bit better idea now of what needs to happen to get their facility up and running and ready to produce. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple from the chat. We've got Shannon has meat and chill rabbits. Is the use of their poo fertilizer frowned upon for market growing?
Yeah. So with using manure, the key issues are timing and what crops you're putting it on. So if you wanted to use manure on a lettuce bed, you would want to make sure that you were at least 90 days from harvest when you applied it. And if you wanted to use it on a, say, tomato bed, oh wait, sorry, I just did that backwards. 120 days for lettuce because it's contacting the soil, and 90 days for tomatoes because they're off the ground. So raw manure is definitely a timing issue. Another way to handle it is you could include it in your compost and make sure that it's fully composted before you apply it. I guess some other issues with compost are on quality. It sounds like that manure was coming from their own operation. If it's coming from another operation, you want to be aware of antibiotics, dewormer medicines in the compost or in the manure, and salts can be an issue. So that's more of sort of general farming. But yes, you can use raw manure. You just have to be aware of the timing. If you're applying it to a bed of like winter squash or potatoes, you can feel free to do that without being concerned about food safety. I would recommend erring on the side of more time for sure, rather than right down to the wire on those 90 to 120 day timeframes. And that's guidance, it's not a regulation.
Oh, Starling deterring. I personally use a sonic thing from Bluebird, I believe it is, that makes hawk noises whenever it's motion controlled, and it has a little infrared light that flashes and deters the birds wonderfully. It keeps them off my tomatoes.
All right. Will information for the recording and also the posters you mentioned be emailed to us? So I am happy to share the first PowerPoint. Jill, are you okay with emailing out the PowerPoints?
Mine, it's really big, so I'd rather email a link if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. I see Kelly has just dropped Jill's email in the chat as well. If you have any questions for Jill, you can reach out via email to the email that's in the chat there. We will get those links sent out Probably not this evening, but before the class next week, with the information on today's presentations. So we'll make that available to you guys to go back and look at also. All right, so next week, coming up on March 31st, the last day of March, can you believe it? We are already to almost the end of March here. We are going to have a presentation on planning your market garden. This is going to be by Randy Robeson and Todd Jones. They've got some really cool stuff to share with you. Randy is a really involved gardener up in Reno. Some of you guys may be familiar with him. Todd Jones has a fantastic app that he has put together to help with garden planning, and they're going to present on both of those things next week. Then we are going to walk you through the actual producer certificate application process. So we have gone through that process ourselves. And we are going to kind of take you step by step through it so you know what to expect and what information you need to have available when you go to do your producer's certificate application at the Nevada Department of Agriculture website. So that is all coming next week. And we will see you back here next Wednesday. If anybody has any questions, we will stay on for just a few minutes. You can either ask them out loud as we wrap up here, or you can drop them in the chat. The same link that you guys have for the class is going to be the link that is effective next week as well. So you can use that same sign-on link for next week's login as well. It'll be at the same time, 4:30 next Wednesday here on Zoom.
We had another question from Katrina. Is there a distance that animals need to be kept away from garden? You want me to?
So animals in the garden or on the farm are definitely something that you assess yourself, and you want to think about what level of risk you're comfortable with. So there's no particular yes or no with that, but you need to recognize that animals do carry pathogens that make people sick, and maybe think about when they're in the garden and what they have access to, and how you could limit that to limit risks.
Like my backyard garden, for example, I've got 18-inch raised beds, and I've got a fence around them that is 2 feet away from the boards. That ensures that my dog that likes to urinate on things is not there urinating on the plants. And it also allows me to keep an eye on things like the critters where the squirrels might be coming in because they love to dig under my fence. And hopefully allow my dog to reach them as well. But yeah, all the little details. Like if you're in raised beds, it's much easier to protect your garden from everything as opposed to in the ground. You have to worry about the water, where it comes from and where it's going to, and all sorts of little details like that.
I wouldn't ever chase a hawk away from our farm, for sure. So, I mean, that's an example of an animal being on the farm that is really beneficial with rodent control.
So, Jill, it looks like Katrina.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like Katrina is specifically talking about livestock pens.
A livestock pen. How far? Oh, okay. Okay. So, you want to think about if they're upwind or downwind of the vegetable plot. So that's one thing. If you can plan out the location of your vegetable beds to avoid them being downwind from livestock, that's ideal. You could think about a barrier like that hedgerow I was talking about. And if you have something like that in place, then I would be more comfortable with the livestock being closer. There's generally, I mean, I've heard kind of a rule of thumb when you have sort of a larger population of livestock in the area, you want a 30-foot buffer minimum. And, larger population would be, it's not specifically defined, but say you have a whole herd of cattle and right now they're on the fence line and you're your vegetables are on the exactly on the other side of the fence line, that could be a concern, for example. I hope that does that answer your question, Katrina?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my chat. Yes, that answers it perfectly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions? All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We will see you again right back here next Wednesday. So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.